Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome into this edition of CanesInSight PM. I am your host, Peter Reese, and very excited to get this show out for you guys today. I apologize about yesterday. I was supposed to get on here with you guys as we're doing every Monday, starting Mondays and then Thursday and Friday. Was not able to go live yesterday. Had something pop up in the afternoon. So getting you guys this episode today. So appreciate everyone who's going to be hopping on here with me now momentarily. We'll talk. I know it's not in the title, but I am going to talk some combine stuff, some stuff that I've heard. Really, what I want to do today, as you guys see in the title here, is I want to go through my top 5 questions of spring football. And what do I mean by that? It's not questions necessarily in terms of everything being a concern, but just stuff that I'm maybe interested to see from spring practice coming up here in a few weeks. The team is going to have, not just the team, but students will have spring break starting. I mean, their last day of classes are here upcoming this Friday, and they have a week off. So you really won't hear much in terms of the team stuff. They will, guys will be coming in here for visits. So of course, we'll have you guys updated on that here on CanesInSight. But today I really wanted to talk about some team stuff, like some stuff that I'm focused on. And a lot of this we have talked about in the offseason, but I'm also, on top of just giving you guys my questions, I'm going to give you my prediction, right? So this isn't D-Money's thoughts necessarily. We might agree on some of this stuff, but I'm going solo today. So I'm going to use the opportunity, use the floor here to kind of go through some of these questions. I will let you guys know if some of these are like legit concerns for me, but some of these are just also just like me being interested in how certain things play out. So as always, appreciate Anajar and Levine Accident Attorneys. This is CanesInSight PM. Like I said before, 3 times a week afternoon show. We still have the CanesInSight daily every day, 9 a.m. Tomorrow we have our 2 shows as well. Have the CanesInSight daily in the morning, and then the Mike Ryan show in the afternoon as well. So as always, keep it locked here on the CanesInSight channel. We're bringing you guys a ton of content this offseason. Did a huge breakdown of Miami's 305-day visitors. It's going to be on Thursday for March 5th here. So did a really big breakdown of that this morning. Check that out if you haven't already. And I will get out ahead of this right now. Flankerton saying not having 2 position coaches has to be a question. For this exercise, I did not include that. I mean, that's been a question for me here for a bit. Fabian Upshaw, the running backs coach, was officially announced this morning, like just after we got off the daily show. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Like, whoever they end up hiring for these other 2 spots, cornerback and tight end, right? And even with the running back coach job, it's very hard to judge when the hire is made, number 1, or even through a spring practice. So I can't really look at anything that happens over the spring. Maybe recruiting wise, you can, if you're able to land, like if Fabian Upshaw is able to land a Myson Johnson Cook that we talked about, hey, that's a pretty good early indicator this guy can recruit, right? So things like that can show themselves early, but until you really see what's happening on the field here, it's tough to make judgments. So yes, although that is something that I'm looking at here, and I'm still, is concern the word? Maybe. Because look, they're obviously going to have them in here before practice starts, but you've gone some time here without your position coaches. A lot of these recruiting staffers and coordinators and talk about in the defensive backs room in particular. Will Harris has been covering a lot of ground there in terms of recruiting and keeping a lot of those relationships up. So, question without a doubt who they're gonna bring in there, but I'm more looking at on-field stuff here for spring practice, like stuff that we can really look at. And, obviously we'll have all the coverage once spring practice starts, but the sort of stuff that can really show itself on the field here in spring, not necessarily the coaching stuff. It's going to be tough to judge those until we really get through a good chunk of the season. So without much further ado, I'll start with my number 1 question here, and that's backup quarterback. That is, I think, very much so, right? We knew, even though we knew that last year Emery Williams and Luke Nickel could have somewhat of a battle, you pretty much understood with Emery Williams coming back last year, having an opportunity to go elsewhere last year, that he was going to be locked in as the backup. He was your prototypical, backup quarterback that had been here now for a few years, for what, 3 years. And we all know the Emery Williams story, the moments that he came in and getting a couple wins for Miami early in his career and showing the toughness that he did against Florida State. And then obviously the Iowa State bowl game, not a shining moment for him. And other than that, really came in mop-up duty. But he came back and he was solidified as the backup, right? If they could call it a battle all they wanted, if they even did. I don't know if Shannon Dawson ever even used that terminology, but that was not a battle. That was Emery Williams' job, right? So then you were left with a Judd Anderson in year 2, who we knew what he was coming in with, very raw. Still, from a physical standpoint, it didn't get any shorter or any less athletic, but you understand there are questions there about, hey, can this guy see the field? Can he make just the easy throws right in front of him? And I think we'll still have those questions now coming into this spring, right? Going into year 3 for him. So I'm looking at this backup quarterback battle saying, to me right now, it's Luke Nickel, Darian Coleman as the most likely guys in that real race here. So how can we assess this? One thing that Mario Cristobal told us in his interview a couple weeks back when we had him on, and even outside of the interview, was just how excited he was about the quarterback room, and not just Darian Mensah, right? He stressed that it was the depth of the room as a whole, and really, to me, the talent, right? Because Darian Coleman is someone arm talent-wise that has got everything. The size, the ability to take hits at this stage, we'll see how that progresses. But he's got a real opportunity here this spring. Why? Because Darian Mensah is the number 1 guy. Luke Nickel has a year under his belt, and I'll get to him in a second. But Coleman's going to be throwing to some big-time receivers, just as Luke Nickel's going to be and have the opportunity to. So the depth from the wide receiver perspective, I think, is way better for some of these backups. And it's something D-Money has mentioned a lot. But Luke Nickel, when he came in here last spring, was throwing a ton of picks. And it was I think it was a real learning curve for him. Part of it is him and just the game being sped up from the high school level. He doesn't have the rocket of an arm, so I think sometimes he was probably trying to fit some throws in windows that were not necessarily there, or maybe at the high school level he could make it into the window. But I think with that now 4 year under his belt, he should be much more prepared for this opportunity now ahead of him. And as Flankerton says here, going back to Coleman, he says, heard the ball flies out of Coleman's hands and decision-making is ahead of schedule. I have heard similar things on Coleman. So you're talking about backup QB now. Now the other question becomes just how can you physically hold up in the span of a game? And yes, you understand that some of this stuff is you're coming in maybe for a few plays. Hopefully a guy, if the starting quarterback gets hurt, you don't need to be out there for an extended period of time. But why is this backup quarterback situation a little bit different to me this year? Outside of just, I think, the talents being better than what you've had in terms of arm talent and just like pure quarterback playmaking ability. I think that was what Emery Williams really lacked. I mean, Emery had the size. He was a decently accurate quarterback, when given the time in the pocket. We understand he wasn't the most mobile guy. Leadership qualities were 100% there. Toughness was 100% there. Ideally, and hypothetically, he's a guy who would, and I say hypothetically just because the last time we really saw him an extended period was an Iowa State game, and we didn't see that. But when he's given time, he is someone who should make the right play. So I think when you're talking about the backup quarterback for as much as we love the arm talent talk about Coleman, and we talk about Nickel taking the next steps, who can protect the football in these situations? And Nick West says he needs to see Nickel's arm. I'm with you. Is it better than Emory Williams' arm? Is it on the same level? I think he's a better athlete than Emory. I think he has a little bit more, juice in the legs. And again, I want to be careful when I talk about Emory here, because he's a guy that we respected in terms of what he brought to the program, and some of the moments that he gave us. But at the same time, I think Nickel, both being Elite 11 quarterbacks, but Nickel is like a cut above in terms of the mobility. Juan Manuel says you guys aren't including Judd 6'7" Stork. He says Nelson, but Judd, it's Judd Anderson, and I have him there in the graphic if you're watching on video. Like he's someone that's in the mix, and D and I have been huge fans of the athlete. It's just in these limited reps in practice, I don't know that he's done anything for people to, hitch their wagon to him being the backup quarterback this year. So all of that being said, my prediction right now is that Luke Nickel will win that backup quarterback job. And I think we'll have a pretty good idea of that coming out of spring practice. Now, just kind of looking ahead even more so in the future as to why I think this is a very important backup QB battle in terms of, on top of just having someone that you can trust there, is I think this is going to be a team that blows teams out. I think you're going to blow multiple teams out. We were able to get which we've talked about this a lot in the offseason here, is, hey, you got to get ahead in games so that you can get your young guys some experience. And we saw it at times last year, but for the most part, you didn't get them in there, I don't think, as much as you would like to. I mean, you were sprinkling guys in, but a lot of times it was still with the Carson Beck quarterback unit, right? So can this be a year where, when we talk about, hey, why are we going to the portal every single year? Well, it's tough to know what you have outside of practice. Practice is practice, and it's great, but it's tough to know what you have if you're not seeing them in the game situation. So as you guys know, I've been on the portal train here, but it would be nice to see an extended look at one of these guys in games. So Hunter Leffler says it's just hard to see anyone starting besides a transfer or Coleman the following year. Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not saying Hunter that I'm in the same boat. Like, what's going to be the thing that takes them off the path of bringing in a transfer, especially if Mensah works to any of the degree that you think he can, compared to what Ward has done and Beck. And yes, I understand people are going to have those guys in different categories, but Beck was still the quarterback of the national championship team, a team that made it to the national championship. So he did enough to weather the storm there and made enough throws and plays, obviously, along the way to help get Miami there. So how's it going to happen? How are you going to get off that path of transfer quarterbacks? To me, it's one of two ways. One, you're blowing these teams out, and every time you get a fourth quarter, or you get a somewhere midway through the third quarter, and then you get a quarter and a half, and every time, whether it's Coleman, Nickel, Judd Anderson, this guy is flawless. I mean, he looks like it, and you can't really, it'll be unfortunate for some of the teams they're playing if they're blowing them out, but you can't really change the offense much. I want to see them be able to run the offense with that second unit, with that third unit, because to me, that's the only way you're going to know. So number one, if you start blowing these teams out and you really get a good enough sample size, even though it'll be against a lesser opponent, against a team that you're blowing out, you need real film of this guy. You need real reps of them in a game situation. That's number one. Number two, which is a similar type of thing, but it's an unfortunate way to put it, but if your quarterback, if your Darian Mensah gets hurt 4 or 5 games in, 6 games into the season, and you are absolutely forced to go to that guy, whoever the backup is, and they show you enough in that rest of the 7-8 game season that you say, man, looking at Miami's roster this year, you should have enough to be able to with one of these guys navigate around, if you're talking about facing a Notre Dame, that might be a different story. But if you're talking about the meat of the ACC schedule, me out of all people, is very, I try to be respectful of the ACC. Well, Mike and D Money last offseason were saying we should walk to an ACC title and cruise to it. Although on paper you should have. I just have too much respect for the way that these guys, the other programs in the conference, are going to attack Miami when they have an opportunity to. So, and it's funny because Nick West actually brings up something that I haven't talked about here. He says, forced to go to a guy. I hope that guy's Mally. Yeah, I mean, look, if you're forced to go to someone, hopefully you have enough trust in a Nick or a Coleman to say that we don't have to, that we can keep Malachi maybe more snaps at quarterback this next season, as a lot of us have talked about. But as your every down QB, I still have some skeptical thoughts about that one. Nick West says he likes Luke Nickel as a decision maker, as a Brock Purdy type, and yeah, I mean that would be a great thing. I know not everyone loves Brock Purdy, but the guy is, to me, an awesome quarterback and someone you win a lot of games with. So I will take that. I will take that all day long. So that's quarterback. Again, backup quarterback, I should say. We all feel very good about what Darian Mensah is bringing to the table here. So my second biggest question here of spring practice, the offensive line rotation. You have multiple starting spots up for grabs. We're seeing, everything from Markel Bell here in the NFL Combine. Of course, Francis Mauanoa should be a top 10 pick in this process. Markel Bell, we'll see where he ends up, but he was one of the best left tackles in college football this year. Samson Okunlola, Matthew McCoy, both coming back, but what are their roles going to look like? I have a tough time thinking that, and I'll just give you guys a spoiler here, I have a tough time thinking that they're going to try to do something different with Samson other than left guard, right? I think left guard has proven to be a really good spot for him. People will argue, hey, who was better last year? McCoy, because they had that little platoon thing going on. People will say, who's better, McCoy or Samson? And some would say one was better in pass, one was better against, in run. But to me, it was such a journey to get Samson to where he is right now, to a place that he is a big-time contributor. I think one of the best linemen in the conference this next year coming up, that to then go try to move him to another spot, and I know we do a lot of this cross-training, but to move him to another spot on the line when he's gotten comfortable here, I have a very tough time seeing that. So with that being said, I feel pretty solid that McCoy will be the left tackle, right? So let's say McCoy, these are my predictions right now. And you have multiple spots up for grabs, because that right guard spot in S. Cooper, I didn't mention him as the guy who was just at the combine. He's out the door. Right tackle, we mentioned that as well. And then center. I mean, Ryan Rodriguez, I think, is going to be the guy there at center. And I'm not very I don't have many doubts about that, right? Not only did he come back, but healthy, football IQ, off the charts, which they're looking for at that center spot. But as we continue to go through the line, left tackle, my prediction right now, McCoy. Left guard, Samson. Center, Ryan Rodriguez. And I'm going to go with my guard here. And I think guard might be the spot. Right guard and right tackle, I think you might see some more platoon situations, right? And more kind of like we saw last year. And I know they don't want to do this with every spot on the line, but we've seen Mirabal does not get afraid to rotate guys in there, right? He's not afraid to play 7 offensive linemen. I mean, that would have probably been the case 2 seasons ago if Ryan Rodriguez didn't get hurt. You would have seen Rodriguez, Matthew McCoy. You would have seen Markel Bell. Obviously, when Jalen Rivers went down there, he came into the mix, and then you couldn't really keep him off the field. So he's not afraid to, and then we see what they do in terms of the rotations or the packages, I should say, of bringing the extra lineman in. S.J. Alaftuli, Ryan Rodriguez did it at times last year too. So those 3, I'm going to go right guard now. My prediction will be Max Buchanan. I think they like how he really progressed through his freshman year. Just seeing him recently looks like he's put on a lot of really good weight. He's a road grader, man. He's a tough SOB, and he's someone that, again, has gotten better he's been here since last spring. So you have a 4-year under his belt. Nick West saying he loves the Buchanan love, and I think it's deserved. I think that obviously we won't know until he's out there on the field, but he's someone who's a pure guard. And I think that helps him in terms of a lot of guys. I'm sure he might be one of them too. They may play him, may give him some reps at right tackle. I know he's done some cross training at center, some snapping stuff. I don't see that as his future there. I think him specializing on guard could help him in the long run here, because a lot of these other guys are going to be, I think, moving around, and he will be too. But I just think it's such a natural fit for him there. And then right tackle, I know this is a shocker, right? But I'm going with Jackson Cantwell. And I think Cantwell, on top of the fact that, yes, you understand that you're paying him a lot of money. And that's, people will say, oh, well, I hope he's not getting the starting spot because he's getting paid a lot of money, and that's the only reason why. These things go hand in hand. These things go hand in hand in terms of, a guy's getting paid a lot of money. But that's because the coaching staff probably believes that he is going to be the starter. Not saying that he's going to get handed the spot. But when you talk about Cantwell, and something that I've kind of gathered talking to people in the building, right? Like the movement stuff, he's going to be fine. He's not going to be the greatest. His strength right now is his power, or his power is his strength, right? Like we understand he's got the freakish stuff in terms of the way, and once he gets his hands on people, they are having from what I understand, he's someone who has his way with people once he gets his hands on people, right? I have a tough time thinking that the movement's going to be that bad that he just can't play right off the bat. Now, and we're already getting the question here. No, Flanger says no Merriweather. Right now, and I say this because I said something similar about Joe Irvin the other day. But both Merriweather and Irvin have had these knee meniscus, very minor things. They should be good to go here in a few weeks, full go for spring practice, which, again, if you're just joining me, spring practice should be starting the last week of March. So we still have about 3 weeks here, 3+ weeks until we get into it. They have spring practice, spring break the week of the 9th to the 15th or 16th there. So the team will be off, this next week after that. But with both of those guys, Irvin and Merriweather, until they fully get healthy, right? And I don't have any reasons to think that they're not, but I just want to get them back out there first, and then we can see where they kind of get in the mix. Now, that was my again, I'll say it again. My prediction right now is McCoy left tackle, Sampson left guard, Ryan Rodriguez center, right guard Buchanan, right tackle Cantwell. With that being said, I think Merriweather, I think Ben Congdon will be very much in the mix in terms of early reps. Joe Irvin, could he be? We know that he's as D Money calls him, he looks like a 6-star recruit. But I think Merriweather coming in with a couple years experience from Georgia is going to be really big for him. And I know he didn't play all that much, but between the versatility and the experience that he brings, I think he is going to have a leg up on some of these young guys, right? And then Ben Congdon, I've just heard fantastic things about Congdon and his early development, as we've gone through here multiple times. He's 330 plus already. He's moving, probably moving better than how Cantwell moves. But again, and he has very functional strength because of the wrestling background. And he's someone who can play inside. He can play, either of the tackle spots. So, is he the future left tackle? I don't know. I don't see him being a starter at left tackle year one is my guess. But the beautiful thing about it, and I see it I say it here on the graphic. It's the O-line rotation. What's that? It's not just the first five. It's who are the 7 or 8, and there might be 9 guys who could be in the mix for playing time. So, and as D Breeze points out, Reese Woodro. I do not want to forget Reese Woodro in this mix, because I think he's someone who can battle for this backup center spot right off the bat here. I've heard phenomenal things about his progress. SJ Alafatuli coming back again. I think the size, we talk about the size, but it's more the snapping. Can he be comfortable as a snapper? Because it's not something that he played. So it's a big projection there. Or do you just keep using him as the fullback, extra blocker as you do? And obviously, I'm sure he wants to have a role that's bigger than that. But Woodrow's got the size. He's got the requisite athleticism. He's got the toughness, the nastiness. And he just, from what I understand and heard, he's fit in very well in that room, man. This is O-line is a room that you got a lot of alphas in, and I think he's come in there right away and established himself as someone who belongs here at the University of Miami and belongs to be in the conversation here for, he's another one. He'll cross-train a guard. You have J.J. Sparks, who I think is really more of a pure center, but I would probably put Woodrow ahead of him a bit right now. So, and Juan Manuel asking about Reese Woodro. So Reese Woodro is a Florida boy from Boone. So, very well-known program in the Orlando area there. His family has a famous spot called the Beefy King, which is kind of like a roast beef sandwich shop, and it's very well known in the Orlando area there. And he wasn't a huge recruit, although Miami did beat out Florida, wanted him, Florida State, which, that's not saying much these days in terms of the offer validity. But he's someone that's a verified 6'3 plus, so 6'3.5, like 315, 320 range. And he's moving, man. Baseball background. I remember going through his recruitment when he committed, and he's one of those guys that we always talk about the two-sport athletes, and you're looking at it and you say, man, this center played baseball, and he could swing the bat a little bit from what I understand. So he didn't end up sticking with it, of course, but he's a big-time athlete, and I think he's someone that works himself into the mix. So I think Jamal Merriweather, Ben Congdon, very much in the mix here. And again, Merriweather played guard and tackle, played both right guard and right tackle at Georgia at times. So he could end up being one of the starting guards. Like I'm going with Buchanan just because history tells me that these young guys are generally ready to be the guy after 1 year in the system. I mean, Francis was that guy right away. I mean, and Nez was playing a lot freshman year, but really solidified himself there year 2 as the starter. And I kind of see Buchanan in a similar light. 220 Greenwich say people forget Congdon is a top 24 star. Yeah, so I mean, I kind of have talked about Congdon in a way that makes him sound like he was a sleeper prospect, which isn't the case at all. I just think that we're doing so much to compare, and it's a natural comparison because they're the same position, the same class, but Jackson Cantwell was the number 1 player in the country. So people are going to have this vision and expectation of him. And then you look at Congdon and you just said it, Greenwich. This was a 93 rated player on 247 Sports. Number 20 in their rankings tackle in the country. Number 19 on the composite. And he was a consensus top 200 player. So this is a big-time blue chip guy, big-time athleticism. The competition as the offensive line side, but I think this could be a concern for both Cantwell and him, is the speed element of it. How are they going to react to that early? But the fact that you got both of them in here when you did, and you started to get them acclimated and get their butts kicked a little bit early here, I think that should go a long way in the development. So, I said earlier that I would tell you guys if it was more about these questions that I have, if it was more about concerns or interest. I'm never concerned about offensive line right at Miami. That's not something that I'm going to do when Mirabal and Cristobal are here. but 4 is a lot to replace. 4, even though it's technically not 4 true ones because you have Samson and McCoy playing as much as they were, you're going to replace 4 different spots on the O-line from last year. So to me, concern, not so much, as I just alluded to, just not going to do that with Mirabal and Cristobal. But certainly the biggest question we've had at O-line, I mean, outside of year one, I would say. And I got to go back and look at it. But I think that O-line was pretty darn good year 2. I think this one could be better. But, I mean, you had Rivers, right? Someone help me out. You had Rivers. You had Malinoa, year 2, Inez, Matt Lee, right? Was Matt Lee year 2 or year 1, or was that Carpenter? I'm now losing some of these years here. But my point is that these are guys that were recruited by Mario and Chris and Mirabal. So you shouldn't really be concerned about the talent level. It's more about experience that we're talking about here. And Greenwich says O-line's probably the only question mark on the team, and not even that big of a concern. I will disagree a little bit there. I will disagree because these next 2 spots I'm going to talk about, it's more about the depth that I'm looking at. So that being said, we'll turn the page here from offensive line and look at linebacker depth. And the question I posed here is who emerges from the bunch, right? Because obviously you had Popo Aguirre transfer out here, would have been a nice piece for you, and he was playing in the playoff run for the Canes, so unfortunate to see him go. You have Wesley Basanth, who should be a late round draft pick, just competed in the combine, and all these guys going to be going through the pro day testing. But when I look at this roster, you have Motoré coming back, you have Chase Smith coming back, and I think Motoré was playing phenomenal football there at the end of the year when he had really gotten fully back healthy. But you're going to need some other guys to emerge. As Popo, even though he may not have been the most dynamic linebacker in the country, I think he provided some solid cover for you. He was a sure tackler. He was someone that was a well-liked guy in the locker room, cleaned some stuff up behind the big defensive lineman there. But you understood there were limitations, right? I think Chase Smith, very much like Motoré, was playing really good football at the end of the season there, as he's, it's always been a journey for him with his health. That's been something that's, not been on the luck has not been on his side there, I should say. So who are you looking at now? I mean, right off the top, to me, you have to point to Kamal Bonner and Kellen Wiley, right? For 2 different reasons. Number one, Kellen Wiley is someone that came in, wasn't cheap. And I don't say that in a way of like, they paid him too much. It wasn't cheap, meaning he had suitors and he was a high priority linebacker in the transfer portal. Like other school, he was coveted, he was wanted. So, and he has that length, he had the side to side, juice, the movement ability that you want in your modern day linebacker. I think banged up throughout the year, needed to put some weight on, but he's someone that stays with you. He doesn't bounce after 1 year. Right. So you really didn't see much of him this season. A lot of those guys would have just gone after 1 year and said, you know what, let me go back to NC State. Let me go back to another team here that is, gonna play me more. Right. And he didn't do that. He stayed. And I think he's someone that you need to step up. And I think they're counting on that. Like that's really between him and now Kellen Wiley, another guy who we sang his praises through spring last year and early part of the fall. And he had a few opportunities. He's another one who had gotten banged up, but he's got the full skill set. He can rush the passer. He can play the run. He's physical. He likes to hit, which you would think that every linebacker likes to hit, but he really enjoys that part of it. He can run sideline to sideline. He can cover a tight end, I think, if need be. So he's got all of that. You need him to take these steps in terms of the mental side of the game, in terms of the processing side of it. And there's no reason for me to think that between both Bonner, who same thing, was a little bit banged up, but I think both of them with another year in this system will be way more comfortable coming back, because Corey Heatherman's a heck of a coach. Corey Heatherman is a guy who isn't, I don't think he's a flash in the pan. This is a guy who's a future head coach. We saw what he did with this defense as a real teacher of the game, and he's going to simplify things for his guys so that they can go out there and hunt. I think we will see those guys much better this year, and you need them. You need them because you just don't know, based on track record, based on the history of both of these guys, Monterey and Chase Smith, if they're going to stay healthy. That's just the bottom line, and I think like that's the unfortunate part of it when you're going to rely on players like that. Now, the upside is you have the veteran experience. You know that they're going to be doing the right things. You know that both of them are really good athletes as well. Chase Smith has probably lost a step from the injuries, but with his length and his motor, right, I think no one was sad about him coming back. Like that was a big time pickup for them for it to happen. Now, as Flankerton says, they're running really a 4-2-5, so it's not like you need 7 linebackers to be that guy for you. But I think with the fact that your top 2 do have the injury history that they have, you need one of these guys to emerge here. So a couple more guys to talk about here, and Greenwich says it. Teray, Bonner, we've talked about. Chase, Wiley, and then Pruitt. I mean, Pruitt, we are excited about him. I think it's like, what's that role going to look like? And I'm going to talk about him when we get to nickel as well. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? What we try to put these labels on guys a lot of times, and it's really not. The labels don't mean much. It's like, are they on the field or not? Right. So, and you'll have different packages for different things, but Pruitt has as much talent as anybody in that room. It's just like, can he find his role? And that's kind of the question we've asked about him the last couple of years. In terms of freshmen, you got a couple. You got Jordan Campbell, who came in from Northwestern as a twitched-up edge rusher, going to be playing more of a linebacker spot. I've seen him walking around. He looks the part, no doubt about it. But I think special teams monster right off the bat. But how is he going to recover in terms of, or how is he going to transition to a completely different role? Right. I think he's got the skill set to do it. I think he's got the physical ability to do it. But listen, if he's got the mental capacity of a Mike Smith, for example, who Mike Smith from same school, Northwestern, same sort of transition, right? Was the leading pass rusher, leading sack guy in Dade County, moves to middle linebacker, and ends up being a really solid, second stringer for Miami. Had I think that game again on North Carolina on a Thursday night where he was like the player of the game for Miami's defense. So, shout out to Mike Smith, former number 35 at Miami. Can Jordan Campbell have a similar transition? And again, have a little bit more, I think, not a little bit more, I think has a lot more athletic upside in terms of like what he's running, how he's moving out there. So, boom, Jordan Campbell. Justin J.J. Edwards is the one to me that I've heard from right off the bat, from when he enrolled at Miami, like, hey, this guy looks really good in the weight room. He looks good in just the on-field workout side of things. He was a Rutgers commit, a guy who scored, I think he got banged up in his high school season, but scored multiple touchdowns, blocked multiple punts early on in his year. And you always love to see that because you like the playmaking ability of the linebacker position. You don't want, it's always nice to have a crash dummy, right? You do want a crash dummy, but you want guys who are more than that. And I think with Edwards, you're looking at a guy who can blitz, can cover. He probably coming in on the lighter side, right? 215, 210, 215. And we understand that, these linebackers these days aren't going to be 235, 240 consistently. But I think just adding some good weight to him, he should be a factor early. I really do think, and I think the IQ side of things, everything I've heard is that he's ahead of the curve there. So Juan Manuel says Mike Smith doesn't register. Let me pull up picture of Mike Smith, man, so you can remember Mike Smith. Mike Smith ended up being a really solid player for Miami, man. He played it, and look at this. I found a picture here where he actually has the captain's C on. So not in this picture I'm pulling up here, but yeah, he let me find this picture. This was that night game, Thursday night. N'Kosi Perry had a good game against North Carolina. We won this one. But yeah, man, he looked good in that 35. You got a young John Ford 96 over there. You got Gerald Willis down there on the ground, number 9. You got Scott Patchen 19, Mike Pinkney 56 back there. So I know a lot of you guys remember Mike Smith, but I had to bring that up for you there, Juan Manuel. So linebacker depth, just kind of went through that there. I'll use this time right here real quick, guys. We got 2 more questions that I'm looking at here once we get to fall practice, but wanted to shout out, or spring practice, I should say. Wanted to shout out my friends at Chill Zone AC. Visit chillzoneac.com. Beat the heat with Chill Zone AC. Your comfort isn't just a temperature setting, it's a promise. Visit them not only on their website, they're at chillzoneac.com, but 786-378-2778, servicing Tampa area all the way down here to South Florida. Duct work, duct cleanings, installation, repairs, maintenance, and much more. Chill Zone Air Conditioning. Shout out to Melissa and the entire team at Chill Zone. Call them today for your free quote. Again, you can also get your free quote by visiting the website. Installation, repair, selection, preventative maintenance, and more. And man, I keep saying it, but like, it'll be cold for 3 days and I'll have to turn the heater on in the house. You can call me a baby all you want, but I get cold. And I found out a lot of people found out that they didn't have heating systems in their house, heating units. So hit up Chill Zone AC. They'll get you right there. I know we're in South Florida, so we worry more about the heat. And obviously, Chill Zone can take care of you there as well. Beat the heat with Chill Zone AC. So as we keep things moving here, that's what it was. Flangerton says Romeo Finley had a pick 6 in that North Carolina game. I thought it was Mike Smith for a second, but it was Romeo Finley who had that pick 6. So thank you for reminding me there. Juan Manuel says, I'm ashamed I didn't remember. Yes, he remembers now. So keeping it moving here. And if you're just joining me, guys, I'm going through my biggest questions with you know what? I didn't give you guys a prediction at what happens at linebacker. So I think that Kellen Wiley steps up, man. I think there's just too much talent there. I think Wiley is out of all the guys there, I'm betting on that physical beast to elevate his game, man, because I see what he looks like walking around. I see the physicality that he plays with. And I just think that sometimes these young guys are so excited and ready to go year one. Obviously, he was banged up, but like when it doesn't come right away and you aren't the man, and I'm not saying this was the case with him, but I just think in general, some of these young guys, maybe during the course of the season where they're not playing, they lose the focus a little bit. I think now he sees an opportunity ahead of him and he goes out there and he grabs it and he runs with it because he's just too talented for that not to be the case. If it doesn't work out, then something went wrong there to me because he's that talented. So pretty much that's my guess. And I think Bonner becomes a contributor as well, but I'm more bullish on Wiley than I am Bonner at this stage. So that's my prediction in terms of who steps up at the linebacker spot. The next question here that I have, tight end position, and I will put this one more on the concern level than interest. Okay, and you guys may not agree with me there. And you see what I have underneath there. Can Luka Gilbert or Gavin Mueller be difference makers? And really the question shouldn't just be that, because you have Elijah Lofton who needs to bounce back from the year that he had. You have Gilbert, who was playing in the last couple games of the year in the national championship in the game against Ole Miss, and was giving you some snaps as an extra tight end there, which they really lacked some muscle, I think, in that third tight end spot. last year. You could say even the second tight end spot with Gavin Mueller, I mean, with Alex Bauman. But I'm gonna kind of just go straight to my prediction here, right? I'm not even gonna. I'll kind of look at the room after, but I'll go straight to my prediction here. I think what you're going to see at tight end is I think you'll get a healthier, lean down Elijah Lofton, who is your number one, right? He's going to be your number one tight end in a more defined role. Is he going to be someone who is stretching the field for you? We've seen him do it. Like he isolated one-on-one against a linebacker or a safety. He's awesome when healthy in terms of his separation. His hands are ridiculous. Like the run after catch stuff can be fun, but I generally don't see him as a guy who's going to be a vertical threat for you just with his build. But I do think he's your number one with a more defined role. We started seeing it a bit last year. They gave him the carry against A&M early in the ball game. We see some of the stuff in terms of getting the ball out in space. The screen game, I think, can be a lot more effective with him this year as he's more healthy. And as a blocker, he's a beast. And except you just didn't really see that from him last year, which I think that's where the defined role is. They probably wanted him to play a certain role last year, but he just wasn't up to the health. And you really didn't have anyone else that you could try. I mean, they had to trust Bauman, but there was limits there, as we saw. So my prediction, number one, Lofton with a more defined role. Luka Gilbert, I believe, will be your number two tight end, your inline tight end. Use him more like you used Alex Bauman last year. But I think the upside is higher there. And really, to this point, I mean, Gilbert, he was utilized as a blocker a lot in high school, but he was really more, at least in practice, a guy who was a receiving threat. He's someone who can be a vertical threat with his, he's 6'7", 6'8", long strider. So, pretty coordinated also. He's not just like a big giraffe out there who doesn't. Now, are you talking about Gronk in the open field? Are you talking with the ball in his hands? Are you talking about a dynamic, explosive David Njoku who's just like running through people, stiff arming people, and then kind of has the ability to pull away too? I don't know that that's what you have with Gilbert, but I think another year in the off season, another off season in the weight room for him, and look. He probably didn't come in with as much hype as Brock Shaw, but right off the bat, he seemed like the better player. And I think Brock Shaw could be really good here or at Indiana. I think he could be good here in his career, meaning like his career is not over with. I know he's not a name that people like to talk about, but Gilbert really took his spot. I mean, Gilbert was better than him, not only through fall practice when they were battling for that spot, but he was better like during the season too. So, in terms of practice and all that. So I have him as the number two. Gavin Mueller is my wild card here, where he could really be your best. He might be your best guy in terms of height, weight, speed right now. I don't even think it's a might. He is your best physical talent in terms of what it looks like and how he's moving. Tight end's not normally a spot where freshmen have a lot of success, though. So I think year one, you have Lofton number one defined role. Luka Gilbert as your down in, down out number two. And then you have Gavin Mueller, who is your specialty piece, who is I think as we saw with Lofton, his first year, right? The way that they were using him kind of in packages and in the certain situations they were utilizing him. And I'm not saying it's going to be the same way, but Mueller, to me, will get worked in here just because you're not going to be able to keep that athlete off the field. Another guy that Mario Cristobal is over the moon about early on, has attacked these workouts like a monster. But again, tight end is more of a thinker's position than you may realize, because you have to have the ability to block and not just catch the football, but run your routes, right? Which a Mueller, he was not a pure tight end at the high school level. He was playing a lot of quarterback. They were spreading him out wide. They were putting him at running back. So I like that. I think that's a positive. I don't think it's a negative. But in terms of saying, "Oh, this guy could be the starter day one," I just don't see that at that position. But by midway point of the year, could he be a guy who's getting 10, 15 snaps a game. And in those 10, 15 snaps, maybe gets a couple targets and you really like what you see there in terms of stretching the field and run after catch ability, I think that's very much a possibility. With Nick West says Gilbert has all the tools to be an NFL tight end. 100% agree there. And I think he's a tough dude too. So again, when you watch his highlights in high school, he was a long, tall, lanky dude who was blocking against good, Lakota West High School in Ohio, Cincinnati area, big program up there. So played against good competition. And then, like, I remember seeing him very early on in fall camp holding his own from a physical standpoint. So excited about Luka Gilbert, 100%. And yeah, going back a couple years ago, you had Elijah Arroyo, obviously first round pick, and Lofton was your gadget guy. And then you had Cam McCormick as your blocking tight end, your muscle in there. So, yeah, Muamamel says Mueller should be viewed as a weapon, another receiver. Agreed. I do think he has the ability to be a blocker, though, man. This is like, he's like 260 plus right now. Canes Cats He305 saying, I've been questioning our tight end recruitment. I mean, look, on paper, what they got in this last class was great with Mueller and Briggs. Now, I think Briggs probably redshirt candidate. Israel Briggs, who was a big recruit out of the Sacramento area. I just think he needs to put some good weight on, the core strength, all of that. And then I think a year from now, 2 years from now, he could be a potential threat in the pass game for you. But I almost look at him as more of a receiver, if I'm telling you the truth right now. So I think those would be the top three. And then we got, of course, the wild card in this whole situation, or one of the wild cards, I should say, as we got Cole McConaughey, who's playing tight end now. And I think he could be that muscle for you in the room. Obviously, Owen Ruskovich coming back as well. He'll be a fourth-year player, redshirt junior. He had a really good, last camp, and we thought maybe we'd see more of him through the season. But I am a believer in this move for Cole McConaughey to play at tight end. I think he gives you a little bit of a different body type there, which you could say he was doing the same at defensive line. But I will say I think Keona Davis's addition kind of gives you that piece there on the defensive line that maybe you're looking for, your inside, outside, versatility guy who could set the edge for you against the run very well. So yes, I think he can be in the mix is he your McCormick type, right? Is he just physically from a strength standpoint more ready than we're giving him? I mean, he's ready because he has played as a freshman there, dealt with injuries, but like, does that punch that he can bring get him on the field, as the second or third tight end earlier than we think? I'm not counting that out as a possibility. If he moved to tight end, he obviously thinks that there's an opportunity there in front of him to get on the field, and that's what these guys, want to definitely do. Flagerson says, don't forget future All-American tight end Judd Anderson. I'm not counting that out from happening, man. We'll see what happens here in the backup quarterback race, but yeah, Judd loves Miami. I think if it comes to it, and he's a guy who I think should be graduating pretty soon here. Smart kid. So, he'd have the opportunity to go somewhere else if he wanted to, but I'm not counting that out. I know we've joked about it, but I'm not counting that out from being a Nick West says, amen. Judd is a future star tight end. Look, I'm not going to say he can't be. I'm not going to say he can't be. Nick West also saying that McConaughey could be a bully at tight end. Yeah, obviously it's very hard for me to project because there's nothing even from high school of him playing tight end of like, hey, what are his hands going to look like? Can he run routes and all that? But shoot, if you're gonna tell a guy like him who comes from the defensive side of the ball, just go get your hands on the guy across from you and drive him into the dirt. Some of these undersized outside linebacker pass rusher types, I think he could do very well against. And he's a good athlete. I don't think he's a dynamic lateral athlete that you may see from like Mueller's dynamic. I'm not going to say that McConaughey has that in his bag, but could he be someone that is a nice extra body for you? I'll tell you what, would have been nice to have him if he turns out to be anything like we think he could be. Would have been nice to have him in the championship game when Bauman had been struggling, and then you had Lofton's injury. So yeah, and Waman was asking if he played tight end in high school. No, I don't. We've talked about it, and I don't think he did. So he'll be learning on the fly. He doesn't have a position coach right now, so that's an interesting dynamic here. But you got to think they'll have one in here very soon. So my last question. So again, tight end there. I gave you my prediction as to how I think it plays out in the spring, and that one is more of a concern for me than because you're relying on Lofton getting back healthy, back right, which I think he will, but no given. You're relying on a year 2 tight end who didn't play all that much last year. Again, I believe he will take a step and be a really good player for this team and for the program, but that's not a given. And then I'm penciling in a freshman as your number 3. We can't just be confident about it. So a lot of talent there, a lot of different types of guys, but I don't even know who their coach is. So I'm gonna be very cautious about what I see there, at the tight end spot early on. You know what? I'm an idiot. I am an idiot. Proud Cat Data 8. I completely forgot the guy that I've maybe been hyping up more than anybody here this offseason is Jackson Carver, as someone who can, and I knew I was forgetting. I said he's one of the wild cards when I was talking about Cole McConaughey a minute ago. But Carver, and this is a tough thing about doing the show by myself sometimes, that I'll maybe slip and I'll get comments about maybe other players that I forgot along the way here. But Jackson Carver, big dude, another guy that athletically played lacrosse in high school. I believe he was supposed to go to Notre Dame or a big program, and had his ACL injury that set him back. He wasn't able to play this last year. Every time I see this dude walking around campus, he's got tree trunks for legs. I talked about the athletic background, but it seems like he's recovered really well from that injury. Can he be that blocker? Can he be the one that really and as Proud Cat Data 8 says, he's stuck with Miami, and this is now going to be what, year 4 for Jackson Carver. His brother Hunter Carver also here, as Canes Cats Heat 305 points out. But when Proud Cat Data 8 says he's stuck with us, to me that's 2 things. That's number 1, he wants to be here, but number 2, they didn't kick him out the door, which we understand a lot of this stuff are mutual decisions, where the coaching staff is basically saying, hey, we either don't have a scholarship for you, right? Or listen, you got a spot here, but there's 5 guys in front of you. I don't really know how much playing time you're going to get. We'd love to keep you around. We'd love to have you as part of the program, but we don't really see you playing much. Like, those discussions are had. And I don't know that was the case, but number 1, again, he's stuck with it, so he wants to be here at Miami. And number 2, they didn't tell him you can't be here. So I always keep an eye on guys like that. We mentioned this a lot with Chase Smith last offseason, right? Because Chase Smith could have hit the portal very easily and played his last year somewhere when he hadn't really done anything in a couple of years, and then reemerges this year. So yeah, and Canes Cats Heat 305 says there's nothing wrong with that convo. That means you have an honest coach who's looking out for you. 100%. And I think that's why, really, as a whole, we've talked about so much about the position coaches and all that, but Mario Cristobal is a very well respected is not the word I'm looking for. He's a well-trusted coach by his players, right? He's tough. He's the tough coach to play for. People will say he's a tough coach to work for, but you cannot say because he can grind people down. We see how this staff has operated, and the results speak. So no one's complaining. None of the fan base is complaining about that. But what I'm saying is that's probably why you retained a lot of people. These kids trust that, hey, if they have a plan for me, look at the running back spot, right? I know Matt Merritt was a big part of that. He's gone now. Mario is still the guy who's very much involved in these discussions and really laying out plans with these coaches and giving them the real. What do you need to do to take your game to the next level, right? Kevin says need them to step up on special teams, if nothing else. Yeah, without a doubt. I think a lot of these players we're talking about can earn their way onto the field with that. Juan Manuel asking about Israel Briggs, and as Nick said, I spoke about him a little while ago. Just think he's more of a red shirt type at this point of the process. So my final question here of spring practice, the nickel spot. And the question I posed here is, will this be Omar Thornton or will this be by committee? This one is definitely more of me being interested, not a concern. I think there's too much talent at defensive back for you to not figure out someone at nickel. Last year, we were blessed to have the best nickel in college football in Keontae Scott, right? So you didn't really have to worry about until he got hurt, which at that point you started to see some different things out there, which was a by committee thing, which is why I think it could look like that a bit this year, right? But you knew Keontae Scott was your nickel, and that was your base that he was going to be out there every single play, so you didn't have to worry about it. You have a lot of talent there, and Omar Thornton coming in from BC has played some safety. He's played nickel as well. There's a lot of talk about him being that guy. He's a physical type. He's a box player. He's really good against the run. Can play up near the line of scrimmage that we saw Keontae Scott do a lot of last year. But there's some other guys with very interesting skill sets there. Kevin Dennis says they're going to ask Damari Brown again. You got 4 corners who all want to play a lot and all came back to play. So we don't know what those discussions were, right? In terms of, you got OJ Frederic, you got Ethan O'Connor, you got Xavier Lucas, you got Damari Brown. Damari Brown has played nickel in his career. Could Ethan O'Connor play some nickel? All these guys have to be willing to play at number 1, but number 2, do they have the skill set to do so? I think you have a lot of guys who can play that role. Bryce Fitzgerald, we saw him, and I'm of the belief that I like him at free safety, commanding the middle of the field, but we saw him in some games there where he was locking down in nickel because of his coverage ability, and we're getting all sort of comments and suggestions here. Southpaw Kane says, I say put Bryce at nickel, and he said that as I was saying it. He could play that spot, but do they want someone who's a little bit more naturally physical like a Thornton? Does a Bobby Pruitt, who I mentioned earlier, play more of a big nickel role as your third linebacker? And every game I think is going to be different. I think you're going to see this year a lot more mix and matching at that spot, and it's going to give Heatherman a lot of creativity, a lot of room to work with there with that role. Kevin Dennis says, is it Dennis or Denise? You let me know, Kevin. I said it both ways, but he says Ryan Max like Carver, forgotten gem. He's another one who's been banged up his first couple of years, but legit track speed, was a dude at St. Thomas coming out of high school. Obviously, we know his pedigree, Rod Mack. But is he someone who can get in the mix at nickel that we haven't talked a lot about? Good size on him, like I just said, can run. So Chris Ewald, he's another one I'll throw in the mix that I had heard great things about last year. Someone who was banged up and needed, and we say this with a lot of guys. It goes hand in hand with a lot of the young guys. A lot of them were just banged up. You need that year to get that weight on your body, get yourself acclimated to the physicality of the game. But I would throw him in the mix there. So if Flankerton says if Keontae Scott goes second round, no player should ever use nickel as an excuse. It gets you paid. Look at Emin Wari from the Seahawks. Yeah, man, everyone wants to be a boundary corner because those guys obviously get paid and get drafted at a higher clip historically. But I think you're going to see a shift here. You're going to continue to see a shift in the value of the nickel because these teams are going 3-4 wide. Like, you have to be able to match up with the amount of receivers and different body types, tight ends, everything that they have to throw at your disposal. You need more speed on the field. And that's where you've seen the modern day linebacker become what it is. but I would rather have a guy who can cover out there, who can also bring some physicality, like a nickel. Jontavius Wyman being mentioned here by Jonathan Crumley, and I think he's someone who his ball skills are top notch. His stuff at safety in high school was sick. I mean, he had one of the best tapes I've seen. Offensively, he was a monster. But yeah, and as Kevin says, someone's got to stop the Amon-Ra St. Browns of the world, man. Those muscled up slot receivers who can run. I mean, you need body types and you need athletes with real twitch to cover those guys. So Nickel's a question for me, just because it was such a good, I mean, you had the best one in the country last year. So I'm interested to see how they kind of fill that hole. And my prediction there is that Omar Thornton is your starter there, but you see a lot of different guys. Dylan Day, who someone said in the comments Dylan Day should be the guy, and I reported that Dylan Day is going to be playing a lot of nickel here this spring. I think it's better for his skill set. I think he can just kind of react a little bit more. He's closer to the ball, and he had awesome tape at nickel at the high school level as well. So, he's someone that's also in the mix. But you've got 5 to 6 players there who could all play and I think be pretty effective for you. We got to see who steps up here. Kyle Muncie says, I know Dunnigan's a safety, but could he be a nickel? I think he's someone who could be in the mix as a big nickel as well. You talk about Bobby Pruitt's role. I don't think Pruitt's bigger than Dunnigan, but I don't think their body types are all that dissimilar. And he has come in guns blazing here as scout team defensive player of the week early on when he was here for Ohio State practice, looking the part on the practice field like he belonged as a high school seat. We always say, oh, this guy's supposed to be in his prom. Like, this was back in December when he was here. This wasn't even in January when he had a couple weeks on campus and stuff. Like, he went straight from high school and really should have been on break there before Christmas to he's on this team and he's impacting practice and stuff like that. So yeah, B Money says Omar got to show me who he can cover. I think that's kind of what I said. I'm not saying it's a weakness, but to me, he's more of a physical box sort of safety / nickel that can be really good in run support. You can have against, some of the bigger body types at receiver, but I don't know that he has some of the coverage stuff that Keontae Scott had. We saw him mirroring certain guys. So Jonathan Crumley mentioning Conrad Hussey. I think he's more of a safety for you, but as a big nickel, why not as well? That's just kind of how I see it. But yeah, man, these are great discussions to have here as spring practice starts in about 3 weeks. I wanted to shout out Reese Law PA real quick, reeselawpa.com for your estate planning needs. This is my dad, guys. He will take care of you. I know we've had multiple listeners and viewers who he has worked with already, and he specializes in corporate law, probate, wills, and trust. So, guys, this is not, the wills and trust stuff can get you kind of squirmish sometimes when you think about it, but it's important, man. You have to plan your future and protect the people and assets you value most, so others don't do it for you. Schedule your free consultation today. Experience you can trust, reeselawpa.com. You could schedule your free consultation. It doesn't have to be in person. You can also do that virtually as well. So go check them out, guys, and let them know that I sent you. So, guys, we have almost 700 on with us live here. Wanted to just say I appreciate everyone who comes on and watches these CanesInSight PM shows 3 times a week. Went over an hour long today. I will be going Thursday and Friday to close out the week. Obviously, tomorrow we have CanesInSight Daily in the morning and the Mike Ryan Show in the afternoon. But then I'll be back at the Great Bape in South Miami on Friday. Excited for those Friday shows, as always. Shout out to Jason Gaitan and the team. I know my boy Mondo is going to be headed out there this weekend. So, guys, go check out the Great Bape in South Miami. amazing food, amazing wine selection. Chef Giorgio Rapicavoli, locally renowned chef, in charge of the kitchen there. And then Jason Gaitan, huge Canes fan, supporter of the Canes, curated that wine selection specifically. So go check them out. Appreciate everyone who was on with me today. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. Go Canes.